The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls of the small shrine. Adeola knelt before the altar, her hands trembling as she lit another stick of incense. The pungent smoke curled upwards, filling the room with its heady scent. She closed her eyes, willing her husband to appear just one more time. "Adebayo," she whispered, "where are you?" But only silence answered. The man she had loved, the father of her children, had vanished without a trace 3 days ago. His last words echoed in her mind, "It's time to go." Then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. Little did Adeola know, the man she had built a life with was not who he claimed to be. This is the tale of Adebayo, the Okudaya, a living wraith who walked among the living, hiding a dark secret that was about to unravel. Years earlier, in a small town in Oyo State in Nigeria, Adebayo was a hardworking trader known for his honesty and kind heart. He lived with his elderly parents and younger sister, Folktale, in a modest compound on the outskirts of town. Every morning he would wake before dawn, say his prayers, and prepare for the day's work. "Adebayo, my son," his father would say, "remember that a good name is better than silver or gold. Always conduct your business with integrity." Adebayo took these words to heart. He was determined to build a better life for his family through honest work. "Adebayo, be careful on the roads," his mother would always say, pressing a small charm into his hand for protection. "The world can be a dangerous place." He would smile, tuck the charm into his pocket, and set off on his motorcycle, laden with goods to sell in neighboring villages. Yams from their small farm, intricate beadwork made by his mother and sister, and sometimes electronic gadgets hid by wholesale from the city. Folek, his teenage sister, would often tease him. "Brother, when will you find a wife? All the girls in the village are asking about you." Adebayo would laugh and ruffle her hair. "All in good time, little one. First, I must make sure I can provide for a family." His business was growing steadily. He dreamed of opening a shop in the city one day, bringing honor to his family name. With each successful trip, that dream seemed closer to reality. On one fateful journey, Adebayo had traveled further than usual, hearing of good prices in a distant market. He had sold all his goods and was returning home with a pocket full of naira and dreams of expansion. As night fell, his motorcycle broke down on a lonely stretch of road. The moon cast long shadows across the deserted landscape as Adebayo tried to repair his bike. The chirping of crickets and the distant howl of a dog were the only sounds breaking the eerie silence. He was pushing the motorcycle to the side of the road when a van screeched to a halt beside him. Before he could react, rough hands grabbed him and a bag was thrown over his head. "Don't move or we'll shoot," a gruff voice threatened. Adebayo's heart raced as he was shoved into the van. The acrid smell of cigarette smoke filled his nostrils as the vehicle sped away. The kidnappers drove for what felt like hours, taking turns and backroads to confuse their captive. Adebayo tried to keep track of the directions, but soon lost all sense of where they were heading. Finally, they stopped and dragged him into a building. When they removed the bag, Adebayo found himself in a dimly lit room that smelled of damp earth and fear. The bare concrete walls were stained with what looked disturbingly like old bloodstains. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. 3 men with masks stood before him, their eyes cold and calculating. One was tall and lanky, another short and muscular, and the third had a noticeable limp. The tall one spoke, his voice muffled by the mask. "Your family will pay a big ransom if they want to see you alive." Adebayo's mouth went dry. "Please," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "there's been a mistake. My family has no money. We are simple farmers and traders." The short, muscular one laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "That's what they all say. But it's amazing how people find money when a life is on the line." Days passed in a blur of hunger, thirst, and terror. Adebayo was given little food and water, just enough to keep him alive. He was kept chained to a pipe in the corner of the room, with only a thin mat to sleep on and a bucket for waste. His captors grew impatient when no money came. They didn't know that Adebayo's family, though hardworking, had little to spare. His father had gone to everyone in the village, trying to raise the impossible sum the kidnappers demanded, but it wasn't nearly enough. The kidnappers took turns interrogating Adebayo, each session more brutal than the last. They were convinced he was lying about his family's wealth. "Please," Adebayo begged, his voice hoarse from lack of water and screaming, "I have no rich family. I'm just a simple trader. Let me go, and I swear I won't tell anyone. You can take all the money I have." But the kidnappers wouldn't listen. In their anger and greed, they beat Adebayo severely. As he lay bleeding on the cold floor, life slipped away from him. His last thoughts were of his family, his father's proud smile, his mother's gentle hands, Folek's teasing laugh. And the charm his mother had given him, now lost somewhere on that lonely road. Yet, death was not the end for Adebayo. His spirit, filled with pain and unfinished business, refused to move on. He became an Okudaya, a living wraith, neither fully dead nor alive. At first, Adebayo couldn't control his new form. He would flicker in and out of visibility, passing through walls and objects. He watched, helpless, as his kidnappers carelessly buried his body in a shallow grave in the forest. "What a waste," the limping kidnapper grumbled as they shoveled dirt over Adebayo's remains. "We should have just let him go when we realized his family had no money." "Too late for that now," the tall one replied. "Let's get out of here before someone comes looking." For weeks, Adebayo's spirit lingered near his home. He saw his family's grief when they learned of his disappearance. He watched his mother weep, clutching his photo to her chest, murmuring prayers for his safe return. His father aged years in mere days, shoulders hunched with sorrow as he blamed himself for not being able to raise the ransom. Folek stopped going to school, too devastated to face the world. Adebayo saw her sneaking out at night, putting up missing posters with his photo, refusing to give up hope. Unable to comfort them, Adebayo drifted away, his heart heavy with sorrow. He wandered aimlessly through forests and villages, learning to control his new existence. He discovered he could appear solid, almost human, though it took great effort to maintain the illusion. He found he couldn't enter sacred spaces or homes where strong protective charms hung. The smell of incense made him feel weak, reminding him of his unnatural state. He learned to avoid certain herbs and symbols that seemed to repel his spirit form. Months passed. Adebayo roamed from village to village, a silent observer of life. He saw families celebrating, farmers tending their crops, children playing. Each scene was a painful reminder of what he had lost. He also witnessed darker things, acts of cruelty and injustice that he was powerless to stop. He saw other victims of kidnapping and violence, their fate sometimes mirroring his own. These experiences filled him with a deep sense of anger and helplessness. Eventually, Adebayo's wanderings brought him to Ibadan, a bustling city far from his old life. Here, amidst the crowds and noise, he decided to start anew. He focused all his energy on maintaining a solid form, practicing until he could hold it for hours at a time. Using his knowledge of trade and cooking skills learned from his mother, Adebayo opened a small food canteen in a busy market area. He worked tirelessly, cooking dishes he remembered from his childhood. His jollof rice, pounded yam, and egusi soup quickly gained a reputation. "Oh, Adebayo's food tastes like home," customers would say, smacking their lips with satisfaction. "It's like my mother is in the kitchen." As his business grew, so did his confidence in his new identity. He made friends with other traders, laughed at their jokes, and almost felt alive again. But deep down, the loneliness of his existence gnawed at him. Each night, when he retreated to the small room behind his canteen, the reality of his situation crashed down upon him. Then, on a day like any other, he met Adeola. She walked into his canteen one sunny afternoon, in her colorful wrapper swishing as she moved. Her smile brightened the room, and for the first time in years, Adebayo felt something stir within him. His heart, or what was left of it, skipped a beat. Adeola became a regular customer, always chatting with Adebayo as she ate. He found himself looking forward to her visits, savoring every moment of their conversations. She was a teacher at a nearby school, and her stories of her students brought a joy to Adebayo's existence that he thought he'd lost forever. "Adebayo, your food is so good," she said one day, wiping her plate clean with a piece of meat. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" He smiled, a bittersweet memory flashing through his mind. "My mother taught me," he said softly. "She always said good food brings people together." Adeola nodded approvingly. "She sounds like a wise woman. Tell me more about your family. Where are you from?" Panic gripped Adebayo. He quickly changed the subject. "Oh, look at the time. I need to check on the kitchen. More customers coming in." This happened often. Whenever Adeola asked about his past, Adebayo found ways to avoid answering. He hated lying to her, but the truth was impossible to tell. Despite this, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Months turned into years. Adebayo and Adeola fell deeply in love. He marveled at how she made him feel, almost human again. When she laughed, he felt warm inside. When she touched his hand, he could almost believe he had a pulse. But the secret of his true nature weighed heavily on him. How could he build a life with her based on a lie? Yet, how could he tell her the truth without losing her forever? In a desperate move, Adebayo hired actors to play the role of his parents. He spent weeks coaching them, creating a false history he could share with Adeola. It pained him to deceive her, but the thought of losing her was unbearable. The day Adebayo proposed to Adeola was the happiest and most tormented of his existence. As he slipped the ring on her finger, he silently vowed to love and protect her, even if it meant living this life forever. The wedding was a joyous affair. Adebayo almost forgot he wasn't truly alive as he danced with his beautiful bride. For the first time in years, he felt complete. Life seemed perfect. The canteen expanded into a restaurant chain. Adebayo and Adeola had 3 wonderful children, 2 boys and a girl. He cherished every moment with them, knowing how precious life was. But fate had other plans. One busy day at the restaurant, a man walked in who made Adebayo's blood run cold, if he had any. It was Colonel, an old friend from his previous life. Colonel kept staring at Adebayo, a puzzled look on his face. Adebayo tried to act normal, taking orders and serving food, but inside he was panicking. Finally, Colonel approached him. "Excuse me, but you look exactly like my friend who was kidnapped and killed years ago. The resemblance is uncanny." Adebayo forced a smile. "Oh, what a coincidence. I get that a lot must have one of those faces, you know." Colonel nodded, but Adebayo could see the doubt in his eyes. "It's just, even the way you move, the sound of your voice, it's like seeing a ghost." Adebayo laughed nervously. "Well, I can assure you I'm very much alive. Now, what can I get you to eat?" That night, Adebayo couldn't rest. He paced in the backyard, wondering if his peaceful life was about to crumble. Should he pack up his family and flee? But where would they go? And how could he explain such a sudden move to Adeola? A week later, his worst fears came true. He spotted familiar faces in the crowd at his restaurant, his brother and cousins from his old village. Adebayo's heart sank. He knew it was over. Slipping into the back room, he found Adeola busy with the accounts. My love, he said, his voice trembling, it's time for me to go. Adeola looked up, confused. Go where? What are you talking about? But before she could say more, Adebayo vanished, using all his supernatural energy to disappear completely. The next few days were chaos. Adeola and the children were distraught. The police were called. Search parties combed the area. But Adebayo was gone without a trace. As the days turned into weeks, whispers began. How could a man simply disappear? The story spread, growing with each retelling. Finally, Adebayo's old family sat down with Adeola. They told her everything, about his kidnapping, his death, and the strange sightings afterward. They showed her old photos, proving it was the same man. Adeola's world shattered. The man she loved, the father of her children, had been a living wraith all along. How could she not have known? But I touched him, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I felt his warmth. We have children together. How is this possible? Adebayo's brother shook his head sadly. The ways of the Okudaya are mysterious. They can seem as real as you or me. But in the end, they don't belong in this world. In the days that followed, Adeola struggled to come to terms with the truth. She looked at her children, seeing Adebayo in their features. Were they even fully human? But when she held them, felt their heartbeats, she knew that whatever their father had been, they were real and alive. The story of Adebayo, the Okudaya who loved and lived again, became a sensation. Reporters camped outside the restaurant, hoping for a glimpse of the family. Adeola refused all interviews, focusing on protecting her children and keeping the business running. Late one night, as Adeola sat alone in the quiet restaurant, she felt a familiar presence. She turned to see Adebayo, translucent and shimmering in the dim light. I'm sorry, he said, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. I never meant to hurt you. I loved you, I still love you, with all that I am. Adeola reached out, her hand passing through his form. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, tears in her eyes. I was afraid, Adebayo admitted. Afraid of losing you, of being alone again. Can you forgive me? Adeola was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, she finally said. But I do know that what we had, what we have, is real. Whatever you are, you're the father of my children, the love of my life. Adebayo smiled sadly. I have to go now. My time in this world is over. But know that my love for you and our children is eternal. With that, he faded away, leaving Adeola alone with her thoughts and memories. In the years that followed, Adeola raised her children with stories of their father, both the man she knew and the man he had been before. She kept the restaurants running, honoring the legacy of the man she loved, whoever or whatever he had been. The children grew up strong and kind, each carrying a piece of their father with them. Sometimes, in quiet moments, they would feel a comforting presence, as if Adebayo was watching over them. As they grew older, Adeola noticed strange abilities in her children. Her eldest son could sometimes predict future events. Her daughter seemed to be able to communicate with animals. And her youngest son had an uncanny ability to know when someone was lying. Were these gifts from their supernatural father? The story of Adebayo, the Okudaya who loved and lived again, became a cautionary tale in Ibadan. Parents warned their children to be careful of strangers, for you never know who, or what, they might really be. But it was also a story of love that transcended death, of second chances, and of the power of forgiveness. As the years passed, Adeola found herself drawn to studying the supernatural. She sought out old texts and consulted with traditional healers, trying to understand what had happened to her husband. She learned that Okudayas were rare but not unheard of in Yoruba folklore. One day, an old Babalawo, traditional priest, visited her restaurant. As he ate, he watched Adeola's children playing nearby. Those children, he said softly, they carry a great power within them. A blessing and a curse. Adeola's heart raced. What do you mean? The Babalawo explained that children born of an Okudaya often possessed unique abilities. But they must learn to control these gifts, he warned. Or they could be dangerous to themselves and others. From that day on, Adeola devoted herself to helping her children understand and manage their abilities. It wasn't easy. There were accidents and close calls. Her eldest son's predictions sometimes caused panic. Her daughter's connection with animals led to some chaotic situations at the local zoo. And her youngest son's ability to detect lies made him unpopular at school. But through it all, Adeola remembered Adebayo's love and sacrifice. She raised their children with stories of kindness, honesty, and the importance of using their gifts to help others. As for Adebayo, rumors of his appearances continued to circulate. Some claimed to have seen him in far-off towns, starting new lives again and again. Others said his spirit lingered near his family, watching over them. Adeola herself sometimes felt his presence, especially in difficult moments. A warm breeze on a still day, a familiar scent in the air, the sense of comfort when she felt most alone. She came to believe that Adebayo's love for them was so strong that it allowed him to transcend even the barriers of his supernatural existence. As the children grew into adults, they each found ways to use their unique abilities for good. The eldest became a respected counselor, using his insights to help people prepare for future challenges. The daughter worked in wildlife conservation, her connection with animals proving invaluable. And the youngest became a judge, his ability to discern truth bringing justice to many. Adeola watched her family with pride, seeing Adebayo's legacy living on through them. The restaurants continued to thrive, becoming a chain known throughout Nigeria for its delicious food and warm atmosphere. On the 10th anniversary of Adebayo's disappearance, Adeola decided it was time to share their story with the world. She wrote a book titled Love Beyond Life, chronicling their extraordinary journey. The book became a sensation, touching hearts across the country and beyond. It sparked discussions about love, forgiveness, and the nature of existence itself. Some criticized Adeola for loving a supernatural being, while others held her story as a testament to the power of unconditional love. For Adeola, the most important thing was that Adebayo's story was finally told in full. No more secrets, no more hiding. As she sat in the restaurant one evening, watching her grandchildren play, Adeola felt a familiar presence. She turned to see Adebayo, more solid than she had seen him in years. "You did well, my love," he said, his voice clear and strong. "Our family, our legacy, it's more than I could have ever dreamed." Adeola smiled, tears in her eyes. "We did it together," she said. "Even when you weren't here, you were always with us." Adebayo nodded, his form already beginning to fade. "I'll always be with you," he said. "In this life and beyond." As he disappeared, Adeola felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, the love she and Adebayo shared would endure. The story of Adebayo and Adeola became legend in Ibadan and beyond. It was a tale of love conquering death, of second chances, and of the extraordinary potential within ordinary people. It reminded people that sometimes, the most powerful magic of all is the love we share with one another. In the end, Adebayo's tale teaches us several important lessons. 1. Honesty is crucial in relationships. Even the deepest love can be threatened by hidden truths. 2. Life is a gift, and we should appreciate every moment we have with our loved ones. We never know when it might be taken away. 3. Love, in its purest form, can overcome even the greatest of obstacles, even the barrier between life and death. 4. Our actions in life create ripples that extend far beyond our own existence. The good we do can live on through generations. 5. Sometimes, what seems like a curse can become a blessing if we approach it with courage and compassion. As the old Yoruba saying goes, Otito kipo enyan, the truth never kills a person. In Adebayo's case, it was the lack of truth that ultimately separated him from those he loved. Yet, in the end, it was also truth that brought a form of peace and closure to those he left behind. The legacy of Adebayo and Adeola lived on, not just in their children and grandchildren, but in everyone who heard their story. It served as a reminder that love, in its truest form, knows no boundaries, not even those between life and death. And so, in the bustling streets of Ibadan, in the quiet corners of homes, and in the hearts of those who dream of love everlasting, the tale of the Okudaya who loved and lived again continues to be told, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the magic of love.